Hey everybody, welcome to Empower Hour. It's Tuesday, and I'm here with my dear friend and colleague Ryan Grubb. He's going to talk about his book, Illogicology. Love the title. When I say it, it makes me smile. But we're here just to have a conversation, and he's going to share about the book and why he wrote it and what's wonderful about it and what's coming up and all this good stuff. So please join in, comment, ask questions. Here we go. Ryan, do you want to start with just sharing who you are and then we'll dive into the book?
Yeah. So, hey, thank you for having me, Dawn. Dawn and I have known each other for a while now, and through different venues. I currently am a mental health therapist, and I work out of Waynesboro, Virginia, which is a small little city in the heart of the Shenandoah Valley. And I'm an author, and so I live in the city with my wife of 22 years and my two girls. And yeah, so I guess one day about 2 years ago, after doing a lot of soul searching, I decided I wanted to start writing poetry, and I wanted to write a book on me and life and what life meant, and I had no idea what to do. So I started to write poems, and those poems turned into one book, and now a second book called Illogicology, which is really a book about expecting the unexpected, or not putting yourself in a box, letting yourself unleash the magic of life. And so, yeah, so here I am now writing books and doing other things and enjoying life. And yeah, so here we are.
Yay. I love that part about just like kind of going with what comes up, right? Like you just had this idea to write poetry. Like what was that? I always call those little nudges or those like little like pulses of desire that we know we're meant for stuff, right?
Right.
And when we listen to that calling, maybe it takes time, right? A year, 2 years, 10 years. But if we listen to that nudge, we know it means something. So can you share a little bit about like
Yeah.
what came up for you? Like, oh, I write poetry.
Well, I mean, you said 1 year, it could be 2 years, it could be 10 years. How about 38 years? So, and you think about this. So, I'm an 80s kid, you're an 80s kid. We were like, 80s I feel like the 80s are back now in 2020s. I think that's what's happening. The clothes, the Converse, all that good stuff. But when I was about 12 or 13, I had this idea that I was going to be the next like Michael Jackson. Of course, I'm white, and he's
I was
black,
gonna
and
be
he's a pretty good
Madonna.
dancer. I can't really dance that well. I bounce. And so, and then I loved music, I loved sports, and I was always creating something in my head. And really, when I started to write the poetry 2 years ago, a year ago, that's really where it came from. It came from something that was already embraced inside of my head, but I didn't know how to get a hold of it. And
Mhm.
so as I learned more about myself and how to unlock my or how Tony Robbins says, unleash your power within,
Yeah.
I became more aware of what I really wanted to do instead of what people wanted me to do. And I think for years it's always been, I do what people say, not what I want.
Right.
And I think we think that's rebelliousness, but it's really not. It's our creative instincts not being let off the leash. And so once I was let off the leash, all these things started to happen. I started to write. I started to have all these ideas, and then I put them into an organized set of words and topics and narratives, and here we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess that's a good way of saying it really can come from before, and then it pops up, but we allow it to come out.
I think
Um,
that's key is we allow it, right? Because and you probably experience this with in your line of work, therapy, right? Counseling, working with people is we get so bogged down by like, but I was raised this way, but nobody does this, but this, and I shouldn't, and what if it doesn't work? And if we can just pull away all of those and get to the heart of like, but what would inspire you? What would
right.
fill you up? What lights you up? Then we like then this path unfolds, right? And it just opens up and we just move towards it. And again, we don't always know the timeline, but if we're allow ourselves to be who we're meant to be, let go of those ideas of what people might think or who or even if they do care, who cares?
Yeah. I think it's a matter of you just taking a chance. And I think a lot of times what people do is they grow up in cultures and environments, no matter if it's middle class, upper class, lower class. And this is what we expect. We expect to die by the time we're 21 if there's drugs around us. We expect to inherit the money from mom and dad and grandpa and take over their business. We expect to be an athlete if our dad's an athlete or our grandfather's an athlete. We expect to be a writer if mom's a writer or a healthcare provider or whatever. And so the biggest problem is those barriers of solidity. Like
Mhm.
they are actually the barriers. And people go, what do you mean? They're pretty foundational. I go, yeah, they're foundational, but if they're too foundational, they're toxic because then you don't ever find out who you really are and you don't really decide. We see all these movies and Hollywood shows and we see, Marvel and everybody's, oh, I want to be this guy. And then we watch it and then it's over. And then what do? We
Right.
go right back to doing what we were doing before. Nothing.
Nothing.
We complete the process of boredom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So logicology is about you. I don't know. It's a combination of faith, but faith, it's not just faith spiritually, it's faith just objectively. Faith that is like, because there's stories in there about narrations about guys. Like I got a friend of mine who works with MS-12s, MS-13s. He's in there, and I got a story about my wife who recovered from stage 4 terminal cancer, and I got a story about my grandmother who had a hole in her heart. So these are stories that are backing these poems to better understand people that might have relatability to you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have a hole in your heart. You could have a hole in your mind. You could have a hole in your thinking. You don't have to go work with gangsters. Maybe you're going to start, maybe you're going to be an artist and everybody keeps telling you, I can't be an artist. I don't have the money. I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's
Starving artists. Just to hear that
yeah.
starving artist, I'm like,
Oh yeah,
but
starving
not
artists,
all
starving
artists are
musicians.
starving.
Yeah, starving are actors, starving.
Mhm.
Everybody's starving. No, there aren't any rich actors. I think Ryan Gosling's rich. I mean, I think whatever. So I watched that last night with I was watching La La Land last night. It was kind of funny. So with my girls. But anyway, that's kind of the rendition that I come from because it's almost like somebody that needs to feel like they have a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, well, it makes sense to me, and I usually refer it to when it comes up for me is refer it to that. I often talk about sleepwalking. We sleepwalk through our life. Apparently, research says that we're 95% of what we think, what we feel, and what we do comes from the subconscious mind. We're not aware of it. We're on autopilot, like driving to work on autopilot. Don't even know how I got here. When this habit of just being how we've always been since we've been inputted everything since we were little, and we can wake up. We have access to the subconscious mind to be more conscious and live the way we choose to live. And it doesn't mean rejecting our family or our past. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means continuing to evolve and be who we choose to be with all of it.
Yeah, I guess the easiest example that I can talk to you about, the easiest example I can tell you about unconsciousness is the fact that people are so afraid to be special, or they're afraid to be abnormal, or they're afraid to be seen as wrong or fail, and it's like Edison said, I didn't create 10,000 ways to fail. I created 10,000 ways not to make the light bulb.
Right.
Or there's so many examples. I mean, we could talk about our experiences in Bob Proctor coaching and how we started, the mastermind groups, and we worked together in Magical Minds, and we did work in tapping and how to relinquish the memories. The problem with people is they're afraid.
Yeah, fear gets in the way.
It doesn't matter if they're rich, poor, black, white, Latino, Cuban, Dominican, Haitian. It doesn't matter, tall, short, fat, thin. It doesn't matter. They're afraid because there's something telling them, I'm not allowed to do that. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start telling yourself with a good energy that, oh, it's okay to do that, and you start teaching yourself, and it doesn't just happen overnight. It's not like this magical manifest, which a lot of people in our society today, especially, no offense to the younger generations. I work with a lot of younger generations. They think you just take a pill and it's like the Jetsons, you just get the meal, and it doesn't work like that. There is a stimulation need to elevate, to change. Excuse me, I got trucks behind me. All kinds of stuff going on here.
Can't hear it.
Oh, you didn't hear the truck? Well, yeah,
No, I can hear you good.
Going by anyway. But the idea behind it is we have to give ourselves space to be able to embrace. And if you don't give yourself space to embrace, you're going to just be a disgrace. You're just going to live in that place of disgrace. And and people want to save their face. They don't want to embrace. So anyway, that's part of my poetry. If you read my poetry book, the Illogicology book, it's all rhyming, and it's all identities of things that we're all familiar with, but we don't think about. I also did it in a sense of poetry is a way for people to not feel like they have to bite this whole chunk of a book off. They can just read some and then they can explore.
Yeah.
Whereas in a book, people are like, I got to read it. If I don't read the whole thing, I'm going to hell. If I don't read the whole thing, I'm not going to change. And that's just like, that's stupid.
Right.
Like, it's like dumb. Like Bob Proctor, what did he teach us?
I
He said,
love
read
that.
a
Yeah.
page here, read a page here. So now I have like 12 books on my Kindle and I just read a little bit
Hmm.
of stuff everywhere and I'm done.
Yeah.
And what it does is it just gets inside of me. It
Yeah.
stays there.
And
So
and it's letting go of some of those rules, right? Like some of that in the box thinking. And that's what, when I have clients that come to me, I've been a therapist for 22 years, so over 22 years. So when clients come to me, I'm very open and saying, I'm an out of the box thinker. Like I'm gonna invite you to think differently. I'm
yep,
gonna share things with you that you're gonna go, oh, I've never heard of it that way, because that's what my
yep,
clients keep saying. And
yep.
being out of the box. So like listening and reading books, like read a page. That's one thing I loved about Bob Proctor. He said he had his book Think and Grow Rich on his desk, and he said he would just open up every day, just read one page a day,
Just
just
read something that's going to
read something.
explore something that's going to give him the chance to implore new. And that's the idea. And so even with therapy, and I think about therapy now with my book, therapy is not supposed to be a rigid conquest to give somebody a solution to all their problems. Well, I had a couple in my office last night and they've only been married a year. And they're like, they don't even know if they're going to stay together because they don't know each other. And I said, I'm not here to keep you together. I'm here to help you figure out whether you want to be together or you need to leave each other. And that people are like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, your job is not to, no, my job is not to, I'm not a pastor. I'm not a wedding. I'm not marrying you. I'm not a funeral director. I'm a guy who's in the middle of a collaboration,
Right.
your journey. And that's what the book of Logicology is really about. You read it for your journey.
Yeah.
It's not about me because nothing in it's about me anyway. It's all about the narrations of other people's lives based on the poetry.
Oh.
Which, if you read my first book, Imaginability, that's about me because I want people to know who I am. And that
Mm-hmm.
book has a lot of deep, that's a little raw. If you're not ready to hear some narrations about life, you might get smacked in the mouth because there's a narration after every poem in that one. In the new one, it's not like that. So
You know what I found interesting, Ryan, is in this new, world of speaking and writing, collaborating with in a couple books, being a therapist, we've learned to, keep our story out of it, right? We've learned to just be a listener and guide people. And then the coaching world is different. There's more collaboration. And then the speaking world is about sharing your stories, sharing stories. And I was really nervous when I started sharing my own stuff. Like, this is supposed to be private, right? I'm supposed to be here to guide and all that good stuff. But what I found that just warms my heart is that people connect. Like, it's true what they say
yeah,
is
they do. They
people
relate.
connect, and we're like, really? You can relate to my story? Really? Even if it's not the same story, there's something within our humanness,
Right.
within our own experience as human, people relate to, and it brings us closer. And I just,
Yeah.
it's something like, no kidding, but it's not. It's like, yeah, that's right. That's how we connect. So important.
Yeah, and even it's funny you said it about the therapy work because we have all this. We're afraid of disclosures and we're afraid of this, and we do need to be cautious. But at the same time, people that come to therapy in the present state, I know you don't. I don't think you're practicing as much as you used to. Anyway, I'm practicing pretty often. They need a disclosure, even if it's. And yeah, you don't want to give your life away to people, but I do tell people about me, and I do tell people about what's going on in my life. It's not to a point where it's about me, but it's about the poetic justice of somebody being able to relate to it. And once you do that, people are like, oh, I can work through my stuff. I can make things different.
Yeah.
Or I don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
big one.
I found a client once when I was out shopping with family, and we started talking about panic attacks and how when I was in college, I had a panic attack for the first time. And the person in the store said, "You've had panic attacks and you're a therapist?" And yes. Can I work with you? Sure. Because she's like, for the fact that you can understand that if I talk about panic attack, you know what it means. Like we can relate. Like we're
Right,
human. We have
right,
experiences,
right.
and that we we don't want to feel alone, right? That's like that common theme is like we want to know that we're not alone and that we're not, but so often we feel alone.
Right. We feel alone because I think what we do is we isolate ourselves because of fear. And then also we don't want to look bad. So I think if you read this book, the idea behind it is both looking good and looking bad. I mean, there's a thing you can have truth in both good and bad. I mean, that's kind of a the DBT type thing, and that's a therapy thing. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about what I said. I'm not speaking in tongues, but it's a matter of us being okay with the truthfulness of everything about ourselves. One of my buddies told me, who's in the book, he wrote my foreword to my book, Kit Cummings. He wrote the foreword to my book. He's in chapter 5. His story's in there. It's an amazing story. A fallen preacher finding his purpose. And he told me, he said, one of the things that people don't do is they don't love their shadows. And when he
Ah,
told me that, I'm like, oh yeah, you mean, he goes, the dark side, man. He's like, dark side. He's like, we all have a dark side, people all have stuff. And it's like, I'm not talking about hiding stuff. I'm talking about temptations and struggles and if we don't love that part of us, the guilt, and we don't help it become different, then we live two separate lives.
right.
We're two people. Talk about personality disorders. We don't need to go get a therapist to diagnose that. We can have one without even going. You don't even have to open up the DSM to do that. You can just go, hey, I'm just messed up, split down the middle. So he said, if you don't love your shadows, you can't love what's really good about yourself either.
Right. I
And
can't.
so,
That's so, and I'm learning, well, I'm digging more into that, I should say, because there's Debbie Ford talked about the shadow side, the shadow self, long time ago, I have that. And then this new spiritual teacher I've been listening to, she talks about the contrast, like noticing the contrast of what you don't want, because and we often like, I just don't want it. I've had clients say to me,
right.
I just want to be happy all the time. I never want to feel sad. Sorry, I can't even do that to you, and
That
I'll let
doesn't work.
it doesn't work.
It doesn't
And
work.
here's why it's okay, right? It's okay to know what you don't want. Know what's uncomfortable, because then you know what's comfortable. Know what is fearful, because then you know what's safe and what's,
Right. Yeah.
it's so important
Yeah.
to know that
Yeah.
and recognize it.
And it's okay to be sad. Like, it's okay to have sadness sometimes. You don't have to live in it. But I think another thing that I think that I've learned, even through the paradigm shifts, and even through a lot of great teaching from people like Bob, some of the things that I feel like are necessary, we have to really allow people to feel anxious so they can be unanxious, to feel fear so they can be unfeared. And what people do is they stuff their fear,
Mhm.
and then we wonder why the suicide rates are high and all, because we're not expressing ourselves.
Not
But we're
express.
also not expressing ourselves as everything is fine and great, we're all perfect, and the good vibes all the time. I'm like, okay, stop. Okay, you're lying to yourself. Now, am I telling you to be mad? No, but just be real.
Feel.
Be
Yeah.
real. Be
Yeah.
real. And that's what Illogicology is about, is realness. It's really, I put poetry on paper, and then I used real stories of people that are narrative based to help people realize, hey, you know what? I have a major problem with my fall. I'm not forgiving my divorce, or forgiving my affair, or forgiving,
Mhm.
or I was really sick and I really don't, or I'm still sick and I don't think I can say yes to anything new.
Yeah.
And you know,
It's stuck.
and the simple way to say it is, be illogical to what you objectively see. And people go, that's crazy. I'm supposed to see a solid entity with 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 unadulterated effect. I go, yes, you are. Yes, because before this world was even built, there was, and I'm not trying to be spiritually, but I am a little bit spiritual here. There was a creative wind that came in. There wasn't anything here. There was no buildings. There was no
Mhm.
interstate. There was no, there was no internet. There was no cell phones. There was no Alexander Graham Bell. There was no Henry Ford. There was no. So why not?
Right. Why
Why
not?
not?
Right.
Why not?
So good. So true.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think this book can change people's perspectives. And I talk about the shift, like well, I talk a lot about self-image and shifting from the image of yourself to over here, see something different. And that's what this your book can help people do. Shift your thinking just a little bit, see something from this point instead of over here, because it's often we stay so firm and like it's this way, it's this way. It's like, well, what if for just a moment, what if?
What if? What
Just
if right there? What if? What if the sun came out today? What if somebody called me and asked me to speak? What if, and these are things I've had to learn. I mean, look, let me explain to you, the viewers here. This is not something I just showed up one day and wrote this book. Dawn and I have known each other for a long, long time. And Dawn and I both have made really conscious choices to face our fears. And there have been times when she's had to talk me off the ledge and I've had to talk her off the ledge. And we're friends. And so it's not just a colleague business thing here. We're talking about really investing in yourself, in-depth perception. And when you do that, you start to really advance yourself. I think a lot of people want to walk with perfection without feeling any pain. That does not happen.
no,
That does not happen.
nope, not at
And
all.
yeah, and so illogical to me is not fantasy. It's not well, it is fantasy, but it's logical fantasy. It's almost like, okay, I'm gonna sit with myself illogically logical. People are like, what in the world is this guy talking about? Reach out to me, I'll tell you more. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, if you want to find out more. But I think the idea of the book also is to get a presence for myself as a therapist who is really out of the box. I'm very illogical. I don't I don't plan your therapy when you walk in. I don't give you the keys to something unless you help me find the door. And so yeah, so
Love that. And isn't fantasy, would you like relate fantasy with like our imagination, right?
yeah, like I think, like, being imaginative is not right. It's illogical to people. They're like, well, I can't be fanatical today because I have to go to sit in an office. And if I'm fanatical, I'm going to start being, not effective in my work. Well, you could be imaginative and be effective in your work. You could become a very, very productive worker. You could become a very, very productive housewife, husband, lover, friend, parent. If I've learned anything about my parenting over the last 5 years, with my wife going through terminal cancer. I have a daughter in Boston. She's in school there full time. She's going through her own stuff. Then I have a younger daughter who's gone through some ovary issues and cysts and surgeries and things like that, all at the same time. So you have to imagine, even in those moments, face your fear and imagine change.
Yeah,
Fantasy is nothing more than you being hypnotized by something that is positive
yeah,
without it being rah-rah.
yeah, yeah. It's being creative. It's
It
just
is.
being
It
being
is.
it's just it's fully living. That's how
It
I
is.
see it.
It is. It
And
is. Yep.
mhm. And
It's
we
full
lose
throttle.
it. I think we lose it as we get older. I'm remembering my son. He's such a sweet. He just turned 21 February 3rd, and he started when he
Oh, my
started.
birthday's February 4th. Look at that. Oh, we're
Oh my gosh! Well,
birthdays.
happy birthday, Ryan. I
Thank you
didn't
so much. Well,
realize.
happy birthday to him. Happy birthday to him.
And I remember a point when he said, this being adult is hard. You gotta save money and you gotta work hard. And I said, yes, you do, honey. But I said,
But
please play, have fun, enjoy this journey because that's kind of the problem with us adults is we get stuck in the seriousness and we don't
we
play, we
do.
don't
We
create, we don't
do.
have an imagination
We do. We do.
anymore.
Yeah, we do. And if this book does anything for you, if you're a 9 to 5er and you feel like you can't be anything, I'm not telling you to go quit your job or stop working. If you are going through a divorce or you are going through a drug rehab situation or addiction, if you don't know what you're going to do in your career, if you are just flat out don't know what life's going to bring, if you're young, old, thin, fat, tall, short, doesn't matter. Be willing to give yourself space to say, what if? What if? What if I did this?
Yeah.
And when you do that, you create an image. You don't realize that you're creating a different image when you do that.
Yes. A different,
Just
yeah,
that one
different
thing.
image
Just
in
that
the
one
mind.
thing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Just that one
Yeah.
thing. One thing. Yeah.
I'll say to my clients often, those that struggle with things, well, we all do, negative thinking, limited thinking. And I've often asked, what if you didn't have that thought? What if that thought didn't exist? Who would you be without that thought? And the eyes get wide and they're like, I never thought of not having the
Right, right.
thought.
I never thought of that. I never thought of that because they're surviving. We
Yep,
survive. We
yep,
survive.
yes. And
Yeah.
we can thrive. So take this thought, put it out here for a minute and go, okay, what would life feel like and look like and be if I didn't have that thought? And just like you could see the tension drip away. And it's like,
Oh yeah.
keep being in that space because that shifts the energy, it shifts everything, and then it allows us to be in our imagination, our creativity, thinking a lot differently, illogically, and then we start to create what we want
Yeah,
from.
I think in
Mhm.
America right now we are at a really pivotal time in our country. I think the generations that are that 20s and 30s and 40-year olds, they have a they have a job on their hands right now that is not necessarily, hey, let's go and let's stop this from happening or stop that from happening. It's more like we need to stop and think. We need to stop and think. We need to reinvent. We need to reinvent life. We need to reinvent what it means to. And you said something about enjoy life. If I've learned anything, I think the grind of things we've gone through in the last 5 to 10 years with health issues and finances and things like that, I think a lot of that, not necessarily I brought it on myself, but illogically, I never thought it could be removed until I started to think illogically. And then
Yeah,
once I did that, I was already a hard worker. I'm already a good person. What I did was I was always measuring myself as not good enough. And when
yeah,
you do that, there's no illogical thinking there. You're thinking logically, and that leads to burnout, and it can lead to death. It can lead to sickness, illness. It can lead to suicide. It can lead to weakness. It can lead to selling for something smaller than it is. And it's not just about money; it's about your freedom for something
yeah,
smaller than it is.
yeah, yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's interesting because I'll often, again, working with my clients, I have them like feel what you want to feel. We have to create the feeling of what we want before we even get there, before it manifests in physical form. And that we tend to jump back up in our head, right? And I tell them, stop logicalizing everything.
right, that's it. That's
Logicalizing
it.
gets in the way.
Right. Stop seeing the stop sign. Go on a highway that go on the Autobahn. Have your own Autobahn in your head. You know, just ride
Yeah.
around in circles and
Yes.
and enjoy it. Have hills in there and stuff like
Yes.
that.
And
Yeah.
laugh and play and
Yeah, have fun. Have fun
yeah.
doing it. I mean, like I'm having this interview. I'm in this little town called Crozet, which is sits like next to where I live in Waynesboro. I'm meeting a guy here for coffee, which I'm drinking coffee now. I don't need any more coffee. I drink more coffee than Maxwell House. And but it's this small town, and here I am sitting outside. The wind's blowing a little bit. There's people inside the coffee shop. They're probably looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm the only one outside. I don't really care. I want to invest in a nuance of innovation, and so you don't have to be the next Henry Ford or Albert Einstein to do that. You just have to say yes to yourself.
Yes.
That's all this book's about. Just say
Hmm.
yes to yourself. And every book that I have, and I'll have more books coming out. I've got a sitcom I'm working on. Yeah, go figure. I've got a movie I'm working on. Several other books about how we need to let go of the violent witnesses in our minds, things like that. And
Ooh, that's
you
good.
got to be able to logically advance and take a second to breathe, because what we don't want to do is replace logic with more logic.
Right.
Well, I'm feeling bad, so I'm going to get drunk all the time.
Tack it
Or
on.
I'm
Hmm.
going to stack myself because somebody hurt my feelings. I'm never talking to them again.
Right.
Or, whatever it might be. And we had to break the code,
Right.
you know, break the code. We got to break the
Break the
code.
code and rewrite, new
Break the code and
story,
rewrite.
new
That's it.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where can people find your book if they're
So
like
it's on Amazon. It's on
Amazon?
Amazon, Amazon.com. You just go to Amazon.com. You can find a Kindle version for $9.99. You could also find a paperback. When you hit Illogicology, you're going to see a dog pop out of a box. It's my golden retriever, and she's a year and a half old. Her name is Jovi, and so she is the center of the book because when it's illogical, it's different. It's not normal, and most people are not going to see a golden retriever on the front of their book for a poetry book. So you can go to Amazon and find it. If for some reason you want to buy more than one copy and you have a group of people, I do speak with people if they want me to speak about certain things, and reach out to me directly. You can reach out to me on Facebook or on Messenger. You can reach out to me at Ryan Grubb at realstuffrealchange.com, and I'll be happy to get you a discount for $4.99 for
Yeah.
20 or more. So I can do that too. So there you go.
Nice. That's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, so I highly encourage people to reach out to Ryan. He's so full of energy and life and he's got a lot to share and you will be impacted, positively impacted. If you're watching this, you're meant to be watching this, and probably meant to then take some intentional, inspired action about what you're hearing. So do that.
Thanks
So
for having me on. This has been great, and I appreciate it.
yeah, and I'm gonna have this on my Facebook page. I'll have Ryan's contact information, and I also, as usual, have my videos on my YouTube channel. So if you want to find replays or share it with somebody, you can do it there. It's easy to find. And Ryan, any last minute shares or words you want to share with the audience?
I think the only thing that I can leave you guys with is you only go around once physically. Okay, I believe I do believe in life after, and I'm not going to go there. But while you're here, you have to ask yourself one question: am I allowing myself to think the way I really want to think? And I think sit with that, marinate like a steak, for, I don't know, a week or two, and then ask yourself, what is it, if I'm not, that's keeping me from making this work? Because if you do that, if you ask those two questions, you're going to find out what it is. And if you really want to make things different, you will emotionally and mentally become engaged. Sorry, the wind's blowing. Engaged in change. It'll happen without you even doing anything else.
Yeah.
And then if you want to know more, like I said, reach out to Dawn too. I mean, she's amazing. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
We're gonna leave it with that because that was so good. Just let that soak in. It's so good. Thank you, Ryan, so much for being here. And everyone, just sit for a moment and be honored and so grateful for Ryan and his journey, what he has to share, and his book. You're just gonna be just so impressed. So thank you so much, Ryan. And we're going to say goodbye to our Facebook people. So goodbye until next
Bye,
time.
guys. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Let me stop.